Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. On today's tutorial, I will demonstrate how to make the wrap bodice for a wrap dress. I drafted the full length dress pattern in a previous tutorial. The link to the tutorial will be above and in the description box below. I am going to alter the bodice of the full length dress pattern into a wrap bodice for the wrap dress. Hi, my name is Ayo and welcome to 011 Clothing Tutorials. On this channel, I upload DIYs, pattern drafting and sewing tutorials. If you haven't subscribed yet, kindly do so and do not forget to turn on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. So now, let's get right into the tutorial. Thank you. I'll be working with the following items: a pair of scissors, tape measure, pins, a matching thread, a matching long zip, water erasable fabric pencil, some interfacing, 6 yards of African print fabric, 5 yards of lining fabric, the pattern pieces which I drafted in my previous tutorial. This is my full front basic bodice. The cleavage depth that I'm working with is 3.5 inches. So at the center front, starting from the base of the basic front neckline depth, I will measure and mark 3.5 inches like this. Starting from the center front, along the front neckline curve, I will measure and mark 2 inches like this. I will now connect the 2-inch point to the cleavage depth like this using a slight curve. I will now connect the cleavage depth to the other side of the full front pattern like this at the hem using a slight curve. I will now go ahead and cut it out like this. This is the pattern that I will use for the front wrap bodice. So as to avoid gaping at the neckline, I have to tighten the overlap. So I will locate the middle point like this. I will connect it to the armhole curve like this. I will now fold a tiny dart that is about 1/4 inch wide like this. The dart should not get to the armhole curve so as to avoid reducing the armhole curve. I will now sellotape it in place using a sellotape like this. I will now even out the uneven parts at this overlap area like this. I will trim it off. These are the front and the back patterns. This is where the front neckline ends. I will now go ahead and measure the front and the back neckline curves. I will now measure the zip allowance. For the back pattern, I used the basic neckline of 3 inches by 1 inch and the measurements of the front and the back necklines gave me a value of 6 inches. The outfit has a convertible collar at the neckline. I will now go ahead and draft the collar pattern. So I have here this pattern and I've already drawn a starting margin at the left hand side of the paper I will now draw another margin at the lower part of the paper like this. Next, I will measure and mark 3 inches like this, and I will square a horizontal line across. This 3 inches is how wide the convertible collar will be. I will now measure and mark 6 inches like this, and this 6 inches is the length of the front and the back necklines. I will now connect the 2 points together vertically like this. Next, I will measure and mark 2 inches like this, and this 2 inches is 1/3 of the total length of the collar, which is 6 inches. I will now connect the 2 points together. From this end, I will go up by 1/2 inch. I will now connect it to the 2-inch point like this. From this upper outer edge, I will measure and mark 3/4 inch like this. I will now connect these 2 points together like this. From this outer edge, I will go up by 1/4 inch like this. I will now connect it to the top edge of the collar like this. I will connect the 3/4 inch to the top edge of the collar like this using a slight curve. This is the center back. I will now go ahead and cut out the convertible collar pattern. This is the front pattern piece, and I've already pinned it to my fabric, which I've already folded into 2. I used any seam allowance all through except for the side seam where I use 1.5 inches side seam allowance. I will now go ahead and cut out the fabric like this. I will notch the dart positions. This is the back pattern. The fabric has been folded into 2. I use any seam allowance all around the pattern except for the side seam where I use 1.5 inches side seam allowance. I will now go ahead and cut it out. I will notch the dart position. Next, I will go ahead to cut out the front and the back patterns on the lining fabric as well. This is the basic sleeve pattern. The link to the tutorial on how to draft this will be above and in the description box below. The sleeve is 10 inches long. I have pinned the sleeve to my fabric, which has been folded into 2 layers. I use 1/2 inch seam allowance at the upper parts, 1 inch at the sides, and 1 inch at the hem of the sleeve. I will now go ahead and cut it out like this. This is the collar pattern. I use 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the collar pattern, and this side will be cut on fold, and the fabric has been folded into 4 layers. I will now go ahead and cut it out. It is now time to cut out the long belt for the dress. I have folded the fabric into 4 layers, and the fabric is 2 inches wide on fold, and it is 46 inches long. I will now go ahead and cut out the belt. So these are all the pieces needed to make the wrap bodice of the wrap dress. These are the front and the back pieces. And as you can see, I have already cut them out on the lining fabric as well. And I have also interfaced the necklines, the wrap necklines of the front pieces, both the lining and the Ankara fabric. I have interfaced them on the wrong side. I have also notched all the dart positions on all the back and the front pieces. I will now go ahead and sew all the darts in place. So now the stitching has been done. I have sewn all the darts in place on all the front pieces and also all the back pieces as well. I will trim off these uneven ends on all the front pieces. So I will pick up one front piece and I will place one back piece on top of it like this, right side to right side. I will now go ahead and sew the shoulders in place using half an inch sewing allowance. I will do the same thing for the remaining front and back pieces as well. I will do the same thing for the lining pieces also. These are the two belt pieces. I will now fold the pieces into two like this and I will stitch it in place like this using half an inch sewing allowance. So now the stitching has been done and I've turned the two belt pieces to the right side and I've given them a thorough press with my iron. These are the front and the back pieces. Both the lining and the main fabric have been joined together at the shoulders. And I've given the seam lines a thorough press using my iron. At the tip of the front bodice, I will measure and mark 3/4 of an inch above the hem. I will pin one of the belt pieces in place like this on the right side of the front piece. I will now place the lining piece on top of it like this, right side to right side. This is where the front ends. This point. I will now start pinning from this point, the point where the front neckline ends, down to the hem. The belt will be sandwiched in between the two fabric pieces. After pinning, I will take it to my sewing machine and I will stitch it in place using half an inch sewing allowance. I will do the same thing for these two pieces as well. So now the stitching has been done, as you can see. After stitching, I notched the seam allowances and then I understick the seam allowance to the neckline of the lining fabric. I did the same thing for the other piece as well. I will now go ahead and sew the side seams together. The lining fabric will be placed right side to right side and the stitching will be done using half an inch sewing allowance for all the four sides of the bodice. I will also sew the center back in place right side to right side using half an inch sewing allowance. So now the stitching has been done. So with the right sides together, I'll go ahead and sew the side seams in place using 1-inch sewing allowance. I will do this for the 2 bodice pieces. So now the stitching has been done, as you can see, and I've given the 2 bodice pieces a thorough press with my iron. I left a 1-inch opening at this side, about 1 inch above the hem at the side seam. I will now insert one of the belt pieces into the opening like this. Next, I will sew the center back in place, about 3 inches below the neckline, using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. The center back should be cut on fold if you do not intend to fix any zip to the center back of your dress. These are the 2 collar pieces, and I've already interfaced the wrong sides of the 2 collar pieces. I will now go ahead and stick the collar in place in this direction using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So now the stitching has been done at the center back. I've pressed upon the seam allowance. I've also stick the collar and turned it to the right side, and I've also ironed it very well. I will now notch the middle of the collar. I will now pin one of the collar pieces to the front and the back necklines, right side to right side, making sure that the notch at the middle of the collar match up with the center back. After pinning, I will take it to my sewing machine and I will stitch it in place using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So now the stitching has been done, as you can see, and I've also ironed the 1/2 inch sewing allowance at the lower end of the second collar piece in place. I will now fold in the lower end of the second collar piece like this. So as to achieve a neat finish, I will baste it in place with a needle and thread like this. After basting, I will go ahead and stitch it in place using about 1/8 of an inch sewing allowance, about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the collar. So now the stitching has been done, as you can see, and I have removed the basting thread. I have also given the collar a thorough press with my pressing iron. This is the sleeve. I will hem the lower end of the sleeve like this. Then I will fold it into 2 after hemming, right sides together, and I will sew the side seams using 1-inch sewing allowance. So now the stitching has been done, as you can see, and I've given the 2 pieces a thorough press with my pressing iron. I will now go ahead and fix these 2 sleeve pieces to the armhole of the bodice, right side to right side, using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So now I have fixed the sleeves to the armhole of the bodice, and this is the final look of the wrap bodice for a wrap dress. Stay tuned for my next tutorial where I will cut and sew the wrap skirt for the wrap dress. If you find this video helpful, do not forget to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment down below, share this video with your friends who are interested in sewing, and do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. See you in my next tutorial. Bye, and thank you so much for watching.